All right, so welcome back. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the customer segments, right? So these are who are the individuals that are your target customers, the individuals that are actually going to pay you for your product and or service that you want to provide to them, right? These are the individuals you are building this for, and it's really important to make sure that you dive deeply, right? That you dive deep into who are these individuals, right? So first off, you want to think about who's your target customer, right? Do you have target users? So for some folks, you might be building something that the individual that's using it is not actually paying for. And with that, that means that you actually have users and customers, right? And so who are your target users? Who are the early people that you're going to find first that are going to be the most excited about doing this, right? And so as we kind of go through some of these pieces, there are really important things to personalize this to whoever is going to be your ideal customer, right? So in the best of all possible scenarios and situations, these are going to be the individuals that you want to build this for. So first you want to ask yourself, what actually are their problems, right? You mentioned the problem that you identified as what you're aiming to solve, but what are their problems? What are their actual issues? Where do they hang out? Where will you find these individuals, right? Where are you going to find these people who are actually the individuals that you want to build something for? Now, that can be online, that can be in person, but where do they hang out, right? What are some of their unique attributes? What are things that define them that are different than other people, right? It could be geographical, it could be income related, it could be family, it could be aspirationally. What are those different kinds of things that are really unique to that individual person versus just something generic like saying anyone age 25 to 50, right? What do they need, right? What are they actually trying to get accomplished, right? What is the need that they have that you are aiming to sort of solve or create? And then what are their goals and aspirations? I mentioned before in the previous video that sometimes when people are trying to solve a problem, they're trying to solve a problem because they're trying to get somewhere. They're trying to do something or be a different version of themselves in the future. So what are those things? And so this is the part where you have to take a deep dive and really understand all of the individual parts and pieces of your customer. We talked a little bit before about interviewing and getting information, but I want to pause here and talk a little bit about customer discovery, because you're going to hear me talk about it a lot. And this is how you actually get information back from people who you are aiming to serve, right? So that starts with the customer interview. And then you have to have the appropriate mind frame, which is that you are asking questions instead of seeking answers, right? Your goal is to make sure that the assumptions that you have around what people need, what they want to pay for are clear, right? And so you might be right about them, but you might be wrong about them, right? So you want to ask questions versus seeking answers. And this helps you incorporate feedback into the service that you're providing or the product that you are building. So right now, I'd love for folks to kind of take a couple minutes and just go through this, right? So for your assumptions, what do you really know about the customer, right? What's clear about the customer that you know that you can prove that is a fact, right? Not something that you're just kind of assuming, but what is based in real evidence, right? Now, you don't have to, reinvent the wheel. You don't have to say, well, I know that people will buy a cell phone. Certainly, there are millions and millions of cell phones out there, right? But what specifically about the person, right? I know this person will buy a cell phone every 2 years because they're set up on a plan where they buy it every 2 years. Okay, that is a piece of evidence that is supported by fact. Next, what assumptions are you making about your customer, right? What are the things that you want to know that you don't know that you think that people might want? Those are really important to sort of sit and think about. And so you take out a piece of paper, a piece of scratch paper, and just write down. On one side, you're going to put knowns. On the other side, you can put unknowns, right? And you can constantly do this over and over and over again. And you should be going back to this over and over and over again. But anything that is in the known category has to be supported by evidence. Now, if you find yourself with a lot of unknowns, that's great. That's fantastic. Because then you can get through the process of de-risking those sort of unknowns, right? Finding information. When you dive into interviews, you can figure out some of those interesting pieces of information and detail about it. So I mentioned before interviews, and you'll have a lot of information around the customer interview. But just immediately what happens is sometimes people will say, well, you want me to interview people, who should I interview? Well, I'm going to tell you who not to interview. Don't interview family and friends, right? Primarily because they're least likely to be honest, not because they're trying to be deceptive, but because they care about your feelings, they care about your business, they don't want to hurt your feelings. And so it's really important to make sure that you don't have a scenario or a situation where you are just asking them and they're giving you sort of false positives. People outside of your customer profile. So for those individuals who actually don't fit your profile, there's no need to talk to them. An example I often give is if you have a dog walking service, right? There is no need to talk to people who don't have dogs, don't plan on having dogs, and have never owned dogs in any point in their life, right? That's probably not going to be an individual that's going to be helpful for your customer profile. And the last is kind of along the same lines of family and friends, which are close business colleagues. The business colleagues thing is a little bit of a challenge, primarily because you want to make sure that you're not getting, again, those false positives. And if you have loose ties to someone, they may not necessarily be as candid as you would want to get the information and details back. All right. So the last piece is, okay, so where do you actually find these people for interviews, right? And this is a long list. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can find people, whether that's in an online environment like a LinkedIn or an Instagram or a TikTok, in person. Now that things are opening back up, you can go to meetups or Eventbrite. They have events on there where you can find clusters of people that may fit into your category. Same thing, you can make sure that you are using your own email and phone contacts. Now, it doesn't mean that you are going to, connect with individuals you know really well. It might be to ask them to connect you with someone else. And so that's there. And then also message boards, things like Craigslist and Reddit. All right. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the unique value proposition, and I'll be back in a moment.